back here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. As I was saying before, she's a true expert in the field of autism and a visionary, and has been instrumental in making a difference in so many people's lives, mine included. We're thrilled to have her here with us for this hour. We do like to give a disclaimer at the top of the hour that there is no expert that can give individual specific advice in this format. It's just unreasonable, and it would be disrespectful to the individuals that are seeking help to present it in any other way. So you ask whatever questions that you'd like to ask, and Dr. Granpeesheh is going to give you some general information about that area that I think you'll find very informative, that will help you to go back to the experts who have eyes on that individual and can help you to make decisions from there.
Right.
But invaluable, as many of you have written in. Okay, I want to start with, I actually want to start just say really briefly about a conversation we were having just before we came live.
Yes.
That on Friday, Samantha and I both went to see Autism Rocks. And this is an event now that is a yearly event that was started by a 17-year-old on the autism spectrum, because he was living in Thailand and he was seeing that he and his friends were experiencing some bullying and some separation in their high school. So he did a concert. I think he was 16 at that time. They did a concert in Thailand that changed the way everybody in the school looked at autism. Mm-hmm. They kind of separated it from the clinical and had people performing that were on the spectrum and some who weren't on the spectrum, and everybody got excited about it, and it became like accepted and kind of cool. And then he came over here to the United States to go to high school for a year here, and he was having some of the same issues in his high school and said, hey, I know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this concert. But in the interim, he went to a summer opportunity at UCLA and met this concert promoter, Ned Spector, and said, I want to do this and I want to do it in a bigger way. And suddenly it was on the 5-tower stage at Universal in the amphitheater, and it got big. It just all of a sudden got big. So last year was the first time that had happened, and many performers on the autism spectrum. One of them last year was Logan Shepard. We've talked about Logan before on the show. We show the video of him playing the drums. And Logan has been a running theme in my life.
Of course, absolutely.
Because Logan was the child that I met that I said, whatever these people are doing, I want to do what they're doing. And they said, well, we're doing card. This is what makes the difference. I get chills, and I get, when I think about where we would have been had we not met that family and that little boy.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And that's just like one of those things the universe does, But for me, Logan is this little 2-year-old blonde boy who used to run around the office when in the old building, and he was just so incredibly cute that whenever he would come around my office, I'd like grab him and bring him in and just like hang out with him for a bit, because he's always been like the most adorable human being, and now he's just such a force, and I'm so proud of him. He's amazing.
And he's done truly amazing things, but I almost feel like I want to say to our viewers, he's a part of your life too, because he's in so many of the videos that are on Skills. When you click on the video to see and you see a blonde-haired little boy, that's Logan. Mm-hmm. So he's almost like the Gila of autism here at CARD, that he's connected to everybody in some way. And then so that he performed last year, and it was amazing with his band Magnify. And then this year he really was the headliner, and his band wasn't available to play, so they put together a band around him called Logan's Heroes. And the guitarist from Kiss came to play a couple of numbers with him, and it was so emotional. He was amazing, and when it was all over, the audience was chanting Logan, Logan, because he was. And I was just saying to Dr. Granpeesheh that while we were live at the time, and I don't know if any of you guys saw it, because then subsequently Facebook took our video down because of copyright things, and it is what it is. But if you were watching live, you saw it was off the chain. Is that what the kids say? Off the hook, off the chain. It was off the whatever, off the planet. But one mom wrote in and said, because we all get a little like, and she said, and exactly how is this helping children with autism?
Yeah, she didn't realize Logan's history. I love that.
Yeah, which I thought was the ultimate
compliment. Yeah,
It was like,
absolutely.
what exactly does this rock concert have to do with autism? Well, let me just tell you a little bit about what this has to do with. And she had not seen previously all the other performers that were on the spectrum, and I don't want to leave them out. It was a cavalcade of wonderfulness, and some
Amazing.
other performers that weren't on the spectrum that came to donate their time, and stars who donated their time for videos and stuff. But Logan was the star. Sorry, I'm not sorry, and it was amazing.
That's
so we just want to
amazing.
give a shout out
Congratulations.
to them. And there are videos that exist, not ours, of Logan playing. I'm working on that. But anyway. All right. I want to start with a question since we've gone there. Okay. Hello, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. My 11-year-old son has ASD, ODD, and anxiety. He doesn't take any responsibilities for his actions and overreacts to everything. For example, an accidental bump is a punch. He negotiates with me and my husband on pretty much everything or just refuses. We're getting worn down. School is too. He avoids all work with tantrums, defiant outbursts, or just walking around the room doing nothing. He has been tested and is cognitively average to above average. What can we do to develop his emotional and social awareness and get him to follow simple instructions like brush your teeth or put down the iPad, it's dinner time? He also has a very limited diet, mostly carbs, crackers, bagels, pizza. I really appreciate you answering my questions.
So I wish that this child was somewhere close to us, because these are, in some ways you're blessed and in some ways not. The blessing is that he's very high functioning, very intelligent, and this is all just behavioral challenges that are manipulations, and they're relatively easy to handle if you do things the right way. The curse is that the same thing is that he's intelligent and he is manipulating everyone. But I mean, that's a really good thing in some ways. So it's a little complicated because you have so many different things going on. The issue of carbs is one thing that you need to deal with separately. I would suggest that, there's several different issues, and I'll just try to help you sort them out so you can deal with them separately, because there's a lot of different things here. So he negotiates with me. Negotiation is definitely a two-sided thing. In other words, if you did not respond, I don't know what he's negotiating, because no one's responding to him. So what I think is happening here is that he is either negotiating, like in other words, saying, no, I really don't want to do this. Why can't I do something? He's arguing, or this, not necessarily being compliant. And if you engage in that or whatever, it escalates, I assume, to, I'm not sure what the definition is of, he overreacts. So I'm assuming that he will negotiate and then he will eventually tantrum and have an outburst. And it sounds like most of this is demand-based. In other words, what he's trying to do is escape from a request or demand. That's what it sounds like. I can't tell for sure from what you've written in, but it's pretty basic. If that is the case, this is, it is to some extent social awareness, but I'm not sure that it is entirely social awareness. In fact, I think he's much more aware than anybody gives him credit. Social awareness is one thing. Being aware of what is expected, he probably knows. The fact is that he just doesn't really care to please those around him. If you think about it, and he's 11, most of our kids are compliant in order to receive reinforcers. The type of reinforcer they receive differs. Some kids do it because they're absolutely afraid of their parents and they don't want the parent to be angry. Other kids do it because they want the parent to be proud. Other kids do it because meeting demands will earn them a tangible reinforcer, like, do your homework and then you'll get this dessert, or do your homework and we'll take you out or buy you something, whatever it is. But it's always, everything we do is to gain reinforcement or to avoid punishment, and it's always that. So in this case, it's very simple to think to ourselves, what is he gaining from this and what is he avoiding? And what he's avoiding is, obviously, he's avoiding work of any type, and that in itself is reinforcing. And then he's also gaining probably Not just that he's avoiding this stuff, but he's possibly also gaining some interaction with you guys or whatever it is he engages in instead of doing his work. So the real answer, I guess, in a nutshell, and I'm not telling you to do it this way because you have to do it right behaviorally, but the summary is he's trying to avoid something, and we have to make sure he doesn't get to avoid that thing, because the way that he is avoiding it is not adaptive for him. The fact that he argues, negotiates, or has a tantrum is not okay. So what has to happen is we have to reduce the demands, be very selective on particular demands that are made, and when those particular demands are made, it must be followed through and it must be reinforced. So in other words, we're ignoring everything else that's going on, and let's say a very simple demand is just brush your teeth. Okay, brush your teeth is the very minimal demand. And what you do is you select only that. The rest of the time, you're not interfering at all with anything else he's doing. It is just brush your teeth. And brush your teeth is where he will earn whatever it is that is a major reinforcer. It sounds like the iPad is a major reinforcer because he seems to have it. Instead of allowing him to have the iPad all day, you should probably have him earn the iPad for brushing teeth. So you brush your teeth, you get the iPad. It's really that simple. And that's the type of example. It might not work in this case because he might have access to the iPad for other reasons. I really don't know. But the bottom line is you reduce the demands. You select one particular demand, one particular request that you're working on. That particular request earns him the largest reinforcer in his day. And without complying to that, he doesn't get that reinforcer any other way. And so he's smart. He will immediately figure out that if I want my iPad, I have to brush my teeth. No arguing, no discussion, no negotiation, no conversation around it, no attention to the rest of the stuff he does or doesn't do. And that's it. And that's how you start. Now, you're going to need a behavior analyst to help you with this. If you're near a card site, we'd love to help you with this. If you're not, find a behavior analyst, because what they will do for you is they'll list all the different things. So like going to school, doing homework, maybe getting ready, brushing your teeth, transitioning from preferred activities like giving up various preferred things like the iPad, going to dinner, eating healthy foods. I mean, there's going to be a million things that are demands that you actually want him to comply to. You list all those things, you prioritize them. You say, what is the most important right now? And you actually start with the lowest, the easiest to comply to. And then on the other list, you write all the different things that are reinforcers. And you prevent him from having access to the most powerful of the reinforcers unless he does a particular thing. And you focus on one at a time, so that it's not like all day long punitive. No, all day long he's doing whatever he wants to do, except for when I place this one demand on him, he then has to do this thing. So what you're doing in effect is you are starting with a small demand, high reinforcer, and then over the course of time you increase the demands and you reduce the reinforcers until it looks like real life. You know, I always try to tell people when we're kids, we do much less and we get a lot of reward. Like for instance, you know, we'll get up and I don't know, get dressed, and when we're very little, and everybody's like, oh, good job, you got dressed, or you know, go even further back, take 2 steps. Yeah. And everybody's like, ooh, you walked, yeah. Right? So it's like you get a huge amount of reinforcer for a very small demand. And as you age, it just becomes more and more and more and more. Like imagine if you woke up in the morning and someone said, yay, you got out of bed, you know? Yeah. Nobody cares. Also, nobody cares that you get dressed and groom yourself and go to work and all that sort of stuff.
That you went pee-pee in the potty.
Exactly.
Nobody's going woohoo anymore.
Exactly. So with time, we learn to just do more and more for less reinforcer. And for reinforcer that is more long-term. In fact, people who are successful manage to like reinforce themselves during the day, but then also to be able to wait for the longer term. Education is a long-term reinforcer, as an example. So all these types of things. But, you know, so with our kids, it's not that they're emotionally or socially unaware. It's just that they haven't learned this whole system of I have to do a certain amount in order to get something. And usually the reason for that is that when they have a diagnosis, we as parents tend to worry about them and give in to a lot of stuff. And so oh, he has autism, so I should just let him have his iPad. He has autism, maybe letting him do this is a good social thing for him. So we give in to a lot of stuff, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves in a situation where like the child is manipulating everything around them. That's not a bad sign. I always tell people manipulation is a really good sign of intelligence. It's a fabulous thing, but it's difficult for parents, you know? So don't be discouraged. If you can get a behavior analyst, go back to the basics and try to format his day. I'm afraid there's just too much going on here for me to want to do that for you without knowing him. What a behavior analyst will do is they'll do what's called a functional behavior assessment, and they will be able to really identify each time he has a behavior, what is the antecedent, what is the consequence, how do we change the environment to make that better.
Can we take just a second, though, to talk about the fact that this young man is 11?
Yes.
And that these are things that the people in the rest of their world are going, well, he's 11, and this is the teenage years.
Right.
And they're kind of telling this parent, I'm sure, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. And, oh, you're going to start ABA therapy for this? Like,
right.
They're going to put it on you that you, as a parent, should be able to just get this in place. Or that this isn't that dire,
right.
or your kid is too high functioning for ABA. Or you shouldn't, or you know, first of all, that it's going to be expensive, but in all likelihood, your insurance will cover this because of your child's diagnoses.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And this is not long-term stuff either. This is easy stuff. Like, you know, if you really hit it hard at 11, within a year or so, you'll have a pretty compliant child.
And an appropriately compliant child who's happier.
Oh, absolutely.
Who's getting more done and will get more done. I think if we were to look at, okay, this is 11, and you could do what Dr. Granpeesheh asked you to do, and by the time he's 13, you will have a happier existence. He will have a happier existence. You'll have a better relationship, and you'll be launched into those teenage years on a much better platform to help him to get to success.
Right.
Or you could say, I just, you know, it's annoying and it's upsetting and it, you know, kind of wrecks dinner and it wrecks the afternoon and it wrecks my self-esteem and it wrecks his self-esteem, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. And then you're going to have to deal with it with teenage hormones, and he's going to be that much bigger, and it will be that much harder and take that much longer, and he's going to be that much more set in his ways.
Oh, and it's going to be beyond management when he's an adult. Let me just put that in there as well. Like, the sooner you deal with it, the better. And, you know, I want to say, like, the beginning of this email says that your child has ASD, ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder, and anxiety. So oppositional defiant disorder, to me, is a very, very manageable thing. In other words, most of the time with oppositional defiant disorder is specifically children who really have just not learned the connection between their own behavior and the reinforcers in their environment. Why is that? That's because they've had access to reinforcers despite their own behavior. So they've never realized that good behavior gets reinforcers, bad behavior doesn't, because no matter what they've done, they've accessed reinforcers. So that is one that you can focus on getting rid of, that diagnosis. Anxiety, I'll be honest with you, every child has a certain level of anxiety. As Shannon was saying, one of the things that I see with our kids is that, you know, when they feel like someone else is in control, they have less anxiety. When they feel that no one can manage them, they have more anxiety. So it will be very helpful for you to get these things under control, for your child to have a set of rules by which they have to live. That helps contain our anxiety, to be honest with you. Rules help anxiety. So that's just
because then you know what to expect.
Absolutely. And you know what's okay and what's not okay.
You don't
and
have to guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, absolutely. So I think what we're trying to get to is, as overwhelming as it may seem to do the intervention, it actually, and when you think about what a year is and setting your child up for success for a year and having a better existence for you, it's really worthwhile to do this full on, see if you can get some ABA services going.
Definitely.
And probably your insurance will cover it. And write to us if you need some help figuring out how to do that. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with some more questions that you guys have been sending in on our live feature. So stick with us.
Logan Shepherd. At first glance, he looks like a typical American teenager. He plays in a band, loves hanging out with his friends, he doesn't like doing homework, and he's not really fond of broccoli. But Logan Shepherd is not your typical 14-year-old. Logan was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He was nonverbal, made no eye contact, and his parents were told to abandon all hope. Instead, his parents began an intensive intervention treatment. At its center was a quality ABA program known as the CARD method. This is Logan Shepherd now.
All I really want to say is, like, I'm kind of copying Martin Luther King. I kind of have a dream, like, that one day, like, I can just, like, inspire people and never give up. Because, like, that's what I want to do in life. Because if I can succeed, they can succeed. And I will succeed.
To follow Logan's musical journey, visit www.facebook.com/officialdrummerrock or @drummerrock on Instagram. For more information on the CARD method, visit www.centerforautism.com or call 800-345-CARD. Rock on, Logan.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she's answering your questions in real time. I want to go to one that came in this morning on a question that came in this morning on Facebook. No, this one came in on a live feature, and then I'm going to do one that came in on Facebook. Dear Shannon and Dr. Doreen, can you help with this situation? Told teen to be ready to leave when I get home. After coming home, I told him we are home. After 5 minutes, asked him to get going. He says he's almost done. In his head, there is time before getting to his activity. He's right if we didn't have to drop off his sibling first. By the way, my teen stayed calm while I blew a gasket before I realized it could be I didn't state the facts clearly. Is this A, poor parent communication skills, B, social inferencing, or C, teen had thoughts stuck in his head, i.e. leave at home time versus what leave at this time versus what parent said? I thought he understood, but apparently not, and thank you for your advice. So as I'm understanding this, because this happens in my house at least twice a day, that I say, you know, we need to leave at this time, and my kid knows from previous what time we really need to leave. So he just discounts what I said, but I didn't share with him, we need to go to the bank first. You know, but I said to him, we need to go at this time. So she told him we need to go. She didn't tell him we have to drop your sibling off. He was reacting saying, but I know how much time I have. So he wasn't moving any closer to the door. So is that...
You know, I mean, all of these things are possible. It's definitely a kind of a miscommunication, I think. It's very possible that the child knew, oh, we usually leave at 11, but now, you know, mom's expectation was today we're going to leave at 10:45 and didn't explain it. That's possible, obviously. I also think that there's other things that are possible going on here. For instance, a lot of times with our teens, they just don't have very good time management. So he might have had the intention of leaving at 10:45, but at 10:40 he's not ready yet. Like that kind of stuff happens with teens. That's just because they haven't been able to plan things ahead better. The other thing is, I'm not sure I'm not sure in this case he was even given an actual exact time, or
it was when mom was home.
Yeah, or it was stuff like when I'm home and when, that kind of stuff. So if it, yes, it's a matter of being more clear. It's about matter of saying, like, you have 10 minutes. I'm starting the timer right now. It's a matter of actually following through and leaving in 10 minutes. You know, it might mean that once in a while he won't be able to leave with you, so you need to be prepared for that. Have someone else at home, so he just can't, you know, he will lose the opportunity to leave. That's also a possibility. The other thing is that it's sometimes with our kids, with their teens, they're focused on, they're having a hard time making a decision due to things being imperfect, let's say. So for instance, they're busy trying to get ready and their outfit isn't perfect, or you know, they planned 5 things they were going to do in their room before leaving, and the 4th thing hasn't been done yet. There's some imperfection in their environment that's delaying their process, and they lose track of time.
I think this is not just teenagers. I think I fall into this
Yeah,
category
sure.
as well. This is all EF, right? Executive functions.
It's, yeah, very much so, and it's saliency. It's being able to pick what's more important than the other things, and to say, this doesn't matter. I'm going to be able to let it go because this deadline supersedes and I have to get out of the door. And that produces often a lot of anxiety in people because they now have a dangling situation which wasn't dealt with. You know, so it's just basic stuff like that. But I think what you can do to change it or help it is, you know, just be more clear in your communication, use time frames, use timers, write things down if your teen can read them, give more reminders of the time that you have to leave, and it'll work.
But I actually wonder about the more reinforcers. If in the beginning,
Absolutely.
if it's a thing that we say, I need you to be ready the minute I walk in the door, and if you are, you get X.
No question. That's a very, very good tactic to, yes, absolutely. Like, you know, if you're by the door when I walk in, you're going to get X. That's going to be most effective.
Or like, once you hear me come in the door, you've got 1 minute to meet me at the door fully ready, and if you do,
this
you know,
is what happens.
this is what's going to happen. It'll be party time.
That's right.
Okay. Because as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, that's a good. And then, okay. In any case, so, you know, let us know what happens with that. I want to go to a question that came in live on the Facebook, but my iPad just decided to time out.
Okay.
But it's about Jack Riley on the A word.
Mm-hmm.
They said, hey, I'm curious as to what did little Jack Riley protocol did he follow, and if you can share, I mean, besides ABA. My son will be 3, following a strict diet, 10 hours of ABA a week, 2 hours of speech. I'm asking for more, so we're working on that. So for Jack Riley, did he do diet, supplements? I do all that, but he's at a plateau. ABA has been going for 10 months and speech and diet as well. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah.
And this is a great question.
It is a great question, and I'm really glad you asked it.
Yeah.
And we often say this to people, and it just never seems to change the world enough, because I think the world is governed by funding, unfortunately. So the one thing that's missing is the number of hours of ABA that you're doing. I hate to tell you this, but so Jack, and I don't know, he may have been on a diet.
He did do the GFCF diet for a while. You can actually watch in the show that they stopped the diet at a very early point. They didn't see a huge big bang.
Right.
They saw a little bit of a difference, and when they converted back to the regular diet, they didn't see much of a difference, and that is the case with some kids.
That's right. A lot of kids don't necessarily react to the diets at all, and it's not necessarily, you know, what's important, I think, for parents to realize, and there's no blame in this or judgment at all. As a parent, I know we look for the single thing that's going to be the most effective and fastest. And usually we're looking at diets or medication, and we're hoping that that's going to be the trick, you know? But it isn't. And the truth is that with our kids, there's just a certain amount of learning that has been lost, and you have to reteach that. And that's as simple as it gets. Now, and it's a lot of work. It's several years of intensive work, but it has really significant payoff, and it's worth doing it. It's really important to pay attention to the fact that all the research in ABA shows that 10 hours a week is not going to get to the highest outcome. all the studies in ABA show that the kids who did 10 hours a week didn't succeed. That doesn't mean they didn't learn. They learn, they just don't learn rapidly enough or enough to catch up to their normal age. The kids who did 40 hours a week are the ones that had the most positive outcome, which is why this is an intensive program. You must change to an intensive program if you expect to have the highest outcome. Obviously, if someone is going to school for 10 hours a week, they'll learn a certain amount. If they go to school 40 hours a week, they'll learn more. It's really that simple, no matter what the age. If the child is young, they're going to learn the most with an intensive program. That said, you have to also realize that this child was receiving, Jack Riley was receiving a CARD program. CARD is a little bit different from ABA, just standard ABA, because we don't just focus on reduction of behavior. We focus a lot on skill teaching. And to me, Shannon, that's one of the most important things, because behavior, challenging behavior, is not really a symptom of autism. It's just a side effect of not being able to communicate, not being able to understand what's going on. So for my purposes, the more you learn, the more you can communicate yourself, the more you can understand what's going on around you, the more you can read people, the more you know what's expected of you, the more you can acclimate to everything that's expected of you in your environment, the less you're going to have challenging behaviors, because life is just much easier to handle for you. So the CARD program is very heavy focused on teaching skills. And from day one, we're just pushing skills on you, all kinds of skills, from nonverbal skills to verbal skills to social to play to cognitive, all kinds of stuff. It's a lot of teaching. And all that teaching goes together with like increasing your skills and then at the same time reducing your challenging behaviors. So I think those are the main things. Like, make sure you are infusing your child with a ton of skills. Perhaps get the CARD book if you're not doing a CARD program, and you'll see how it is different or not from your current program. You can always go to our website on skills, which which is skillsforautism.com. There you'll see our curriculum and our program, and also just increase the hours. That's probably the number one thing you can do, is increase your hours.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that in Jack Riley's case, they didn't see a big bang with the GFC diet. In our case, we did see a big difference, and I think it's worthwhile to try the diet. And I think it's worthwhile to try the diet while you're increasing your ABA hours, because I firmly believe that in our case, if my son had just started ABA and started a 40-hour program without being on the diet, we would not have gotten where we got. But we started on the diet and he was ready for ABA, and we ramped up to 40 hours. And I really feel like the diet made it so that he could take in more.
That's exactly the way I say it as well, Shannon. I totally agree with you. The diet is sort of like, I use the comparison of putting on glasses.
Yeah.
Like, if you have vision problems and someone's trying to teach you on a board and you don't have glasses, you're going to be having a real hard time. It's going to be very slow because you're going to have to squint in order to read everything. The diet is just like glasses. The diet sort of helps our kids clear up, the kids who actually have some allergies or reactions to those particular foods or can't break them down. Diets in general help us just feel more energized, more awake, more clear, more able to focus, all that sort of stuff. As does sleep. There's a million things that lead to our ability to learn better. But without the instruction, you're just not, what are you going to learn? So the instruction is ABA, and you have to have all of that in place. Otherwise, it's still a very slow process at learning from the environment.
Absolutely. And we've been saying the diet, and there are like 22
Numerous
diets. But
correct.
I think to start with, where everybody, levels out, first, I believe getting as organic as you possibly can.
Yes.
And then doing a GFCF, which is a gluten-free, casein-free diet. We've done a lot on the show about it. We have a whole segment with recipes that are fairly easy to do and really tasty, and there are more products available available now that are GFCF than ever before. Be careful that you don't get things that are so filled with sugar and artificial colors, because that's available now too, and we need to watch those as well. But I just want to say there's nothing harmful about trying the GFCF diet, but it's not one of those things you can be loosey-goosey with. If you're going to try it, you got to try it, and you got to say, we're going to try it for 3 to 6 months at least, and have no infractions during that time. But again, right now, it is critical. Your child is about to be 3. It's critical that you get more than 10 hours of ABA,
Right. And
whatever it takes.
absolutely.
Whether you have to do it yourself,
Yes.
with skills, whatever it takes.
And for a 3-year-old, you should have no issue getting your insurance to ramp up to 40 hours. Insurance companies will respect that because the research says that. The other thing is, if you are going to do a GFCF diet, please start with casein. Just eliminate casein. Wait 3 weeks to a month so that you can determine whether or not casein was effective, removing casein was effective, and then go to gluten, and then remove gluten, and you will not see an effect with gluten. Usually with casein, if your child is reactive to casein, you'll see a response, you'll see a change in the child within a week. Casein is really rapid. You'll see an immediate response. And the response you're looking for is stuff like, the child being more awake or more kind of, first thing you'll see is like dark rings around the eyes disappearing, and the child is much more paying attention to the right things and curious and interested and so on. And it'll possibly affect sleep as well and improve sleep. With gluten, you're going to have the child on a very strict gluten-free diet for, I would say, 1 to 2 months before you see a real response. And again, the type of thing you'll see is if the child has inflammation in the gut, like if usually some of our kids have either diarrhea or constipation or bloating, that sort of stuff starts to go away and the child feels better and is paying attention better as a result. So do them separately at first so that you don't have to do both, because you want to know which one it is. And not every child responds to both. A lot of kids immediately respond to taking casein out of their diet, and they don't need more than that. Some kids who have GI inflammation seriously do need to go to a gluten-free. And then, of course, as Shannon said, there's many more diets. There's corn that some of the kids are responding negatively to, soy that many kids can't digest. And there's other types of diets that are, specific carb diet. There's many other types of diets. So you should probably educate yourself on what would be appropriate for your child.
Absolutely. There's a lot to be considered there, and we've done a lot of segments on it, and we're happy to take more questions on it. But right now we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and try to squeeze in 2 questions before we leave, one that just came in on the Facebook and one that just came in on the live feature, so stick with us.
A lot of adults don't really believe kids. They'll think, kids are kids, what are they talking about? But when a child stands up for what they believe in, it's so strong and powerful. I first got involved with autism advocacy 4 years ago when my friend was diagnosed. When I found out about my friend's diagnosis, I didn't really understand what it meant. But it didn't matter to me or change our friendship. I didn't look at her any differently. We still had so much fun together. Now I know that she experiences life a little differently than me, and that's okay. Knowing what she goes through has helped me to understand and be more caring towards other people in similar situations. I got involved with ACT Today because I wanted to do whatever I could to help. They provide options like behavioral therapy, medical care, social skills programs, assistance to military families, and much more. Being there for my friend was my #1 priority. I've been volunteering and spreading the word about the cause via my social media platform because raising awareness is a crucial first step. There needs to be more kids and teens involved to make sure that our voices are heard just as loudly as the adults. You may be small like me, but your acts of kindness are not.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she's answering your questions in real time. I want to go now to a question that came in on our live feature. Hello, ladies. My son is 6 and has anxiety disorder NOS. He attends a regular first grade class, but has a lot of challenging behavior that is reported by his teacher. inappropriate touching of other students, loud verbal outbursts, negotiation and refusal to get out of work, and he is very controlling. His way or he throws a fit. He has been physically aggressive at recess, so he is not allowed to play with his classmates at recess and has to earn recess with everyone by playing safely for 2 days in a separate area. He can pick one friend, but they usually say no. Is there a better plan? He now has a one-to-one aide during recess, so maybe she can help him learn how to play with other kids.
Ugh,
Yeah, I know. It's
that breaks
heartbreaking.
my heart. How old is he?
6.
And does he have an ASD diagnosis? Because it said anxiety NOS, which doesn't exist. So, I'm wondering what diagnosis we're talking about here. So maybe anxiety and autism, I would imagine.
I would think so.
If you are live, please respond and let us know what his diagnosis is actually. But this is very similar to the first question we addressed. And we're just talking about a child here who doesn't really know how his own behavior corresponds to the things in the environment. I don't like the environment he's in. I don't like the fact that he selects another child to play with, but then the other child usually says no. Obviously, the other children are going to say no because he's been inappropriately touching them. He's been hurting them. He's not considered someone that a child would want to play with at this point. And he is young enough where, honestly, if there's any possible way of doing this, if it was my child, I would pull him out of school and I would really work on teaching him to control these behaviors and teaching him some skills having to do with how to interact with other kids and how to play with them and all this sort of stuff before I put him in that environment. Honestly, I think he's probably struggling most with theory of mind. In other words, being able to understand other people's perspectives. And I'm guessing that he has a very, very hard time. I'm just reading too much into it perhaps at this point, but I'm seeing this as a relatively high functioning child who has a very hard time with other kids because he's not able to understand them, and he gets frustrated and he's therefore becoming physically aggressive, and then that causes the other kids to want to stay away from him, and it's a downward spiral which is not going to lead to success for him. So if anything, if you can't pull him out and do homeschooling, then I would, the summer's coming up. This is a perfect opportunity to be working on these things during the summer. Please, take him out of school, see if you can get an ABA program in place where the focus of the program is just teaching him play skills and theory of mind, all the perspective taking stuff. And if you don't know about some of this stuff, please go on Skills. We have a whole curriculum area that's dedicated to perspective taking. It's called our cognition curriculum, and it's a really good place to start because you'll learn a lot about all the things a child has to think about in regards to how other people perceive him and what other people expect and so on. I would start with that. Anxiety usually goes away when we're able to understand how other people perceive us, what is expected of us, what behavior is approved, not approved, allowed, and so on and so forth. But right now, it sounds like he's in an environment where success for him is going to be hard to achieve. So,
but let's also say that if you take some time, whether it's that you finish out the school year or take him out now, as
Yes.
Dr. Granpeesheh said, and get in that intensive. And by the way, that we're seeing more and more parents, because they have insurance funding, that are able to do that, that are
Yes.
able to say medical necessity. It's not you taking the child out forever. Like, it really could be a relatively
absolutely.
short period of time. It could be that you during this summer, you can get him to the point where when he goes into second grade, he's set up for success. But imagine if, what you were being told to do is, you're playing baseball and you're up at bat and you need to hit a home run. And you can't do it, right? Because you're nervous and there's people watching and the pitcher's throwing the ball and the ball goes by and the moment is over and you didn't do it. And that's the only time you ever get to practice. You don't
That's
ever have
right.
any batting
That's
practice
right.
where you go to the side and go, this is how we do it. And then let's practice it without the crowd. Chances are that you would never get better at batting practice.
And that's exactly, Shannon, what the problem is. Often we try very hard to get our kids to improve while they're up for bat, you know?
Right. And we want to get them up to bat eventually.
Yeah.
We're not saying never up to bat, but
Right.
but take them to the side, work on those skills, then do one practice so you can do a play date.
That's right.
And have them, so it's not the school situation, but it's a play date where
Right.
you've got a little control and the child can't say no.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So you set them up for success and then eventually get him back into second grade in a better, because if you don't, unfortunately what's going to happen is he's going to remember this and be like, nobody wants to play with me.
That's right.
And then when you get to second grade, as the kids get bigger, they're going to say, the typical, because he's in a neurotypical classroom right now, they're going to say that setting isn't, that, you know, that's not the least restrictive environment that's going to work for him, and they're going to move him someplace else, and it's all going to start to fall apart.
Absolutely. And I mean, all of that aside, it's just, you don't want your child unhappy all day long.
Exactly.
You know, and like the biggest thing I think for me is that bothers me about this whole thing is that he's failing nonstop. And you never, ever want to let the child fail. That was one of the biggest things years ago, everybody used to ask me, like, why do you hold the child back from school? Because parents are also, we're always thinking, oh, I got to get him into school. I got to get him in. I couldn't care less about academics before my child can socially communicate, have language, be happy, be able to interact with other kids. And that to me is extremely important. I don't want the kids going to school being failing. They have to be successful. Right. So that's why I think you should be the one to pull him out of this placement. Either work on it intensively. If there's any way that you could do 40 hours a week for the 3 months of summer, you'll have a different child by the end of the summer. Or if you can't do that, then find a placement for him that is easier, that is a lower ratio of kids, that perhaps you're looking at like we used to call them aphasia classrooms. So these are typical kids who have language disability, or kids who are bilingual and therefore haven't picked up English or something like that. That type of environment is going to be easier on your child than an environment with typical kids. And Shannon is absolutely right. This is first grade. By third or fourth grade, you're going to have kids who are going to be mean about it. So you want to get things sorted out before that time.
And if you need to keep him in school, you absolutely can't pull him out, and there is no other placement. The one other thing I would say is to ask for, call an IEP meeting and ask for assessment for a recreational aid. That they are trained specifically. I didn't even know these things existed until I found out that they existed. And these are amazing people that come in and look just from sports and leisure and how they socially interact in those things. They can do an assessment. They can add goals to your IEP. So this aid that you have that's one-on-one, it might just be a regular aid, and what you need is a recreational support expert. So last thing, we've got 3 minutes and I want to get to this last question.
Sure.
Hi, my 10-year-old constantly stims with verbal scripting. The only time he doesn't stim is when he's in a moving vehicle. What can I do to minimize the stimming, especially at school? Thanks for taking the time answering my question. You've got 2 minutes. I know it's impossible.
Sure, no, that's okay. That's kind of an interesting question. Verbal stimming, I assume the child is repeatedly saying something. So kind of, rote repetitive statement, maybe something they've heard on TV or whatever. Just trying to figure out the topography of the behavior, actually.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of interesting to hear that he does that except for when he's a moving vehicle. I wonder if when he's in a moving vehicle, it's because there's enough visual stimulation that he doesn't need to produce the auditory stimulation himself. So something about this that's interesting for me is that he's producing some sort of stimulation for himself. What I would test first, and this is the types of situations where I wish I had more time to get into this with you, but what I would test, and please write back to us once you've tested this, is when he verbal stims, if you put on his head noise-canceling headphones, will he continue to stim or will he stop? Because a lot of times our kids will verbally repeat something because they want to hear it, because the auditory input is the self-stimulation they're seeking. If that is the case, if you see his verbal self-stimulatory behavior stopping or going down drastically when you put on noise-canceling headphones, then start putting appropriate stuff on the noise-canceling headphones, like for instance music, and or just things that he needs to learn, auditory, instruction. and see if you can start increasing the duration of time with the noise canceling headphones on, which will automatically reduce the self-stimming. So please try that and come back to me and tell me, because that's going to be fascinating to see.
Yeah, absolutely.